All right, welcome everybody to the January 20th, 2022 meeting of the Goose Hollow Neighborhood Association. This is our board meeting. It's a public meeting. It's nice to see everybody's faces. And we can just go ahead. I know that we're kind of under the clock because Catherine has to leave early and she does have a presentation to give. So let's just go ahead and get started. So we're calling to order at 7:10. And let's just go ahead. We have 3 minutes to approve. We have September 2021, October 2021, and December 2021. Can I entertain a motion for acceptance of the minutes?
I have an issue with the September 21 minutes. I sent an email out yesterday with what I'd like to see attached. It's dealing with the board emails, particularly the email that I believe should be included as an attachment would be Sean O'Donnell's, because then it puts the item 8, discussion of board decorum, what that motion is in perspective.
Okay, we have current minutes on the table. Does someone want to entertain a motion to amend the minutes?
So would the motion be to amend the minutes by adding as an attachment the email?
Yes.
So Eric has a dissenting opinion, if I understand it.
No, it's not a dissenting opinion. It's theoretically all the emails that went out. I think a whole bunch of them went out among various board members and then the full board by September 9th. But I believe that based on the motion and what was discussed, that it would be very important in terms of getting context for the 3 emails from Sean to be posted, because by reading the motion, accept Sean's statements as written, if you don't see what those statements are, it's hard to figure out what the situation is or was. I'm not on the board, so I can't present the motion, although I can speak about it.
So I'm not hearing a motion presented. Is anybody presenting a motion to include those statements?
I don't believe a motion is even really necessary. It could be a minority viewpoint. In the past, when somebody has wanted to add or change to the minutes, it's usually, okay, add it. If it's, whether it's textual or punctuation. No, I've never gone through having to add stuff or have a motion to add something to the minutes.
All right. Does anybody on the board want to add something to the minutes? Not hearing anything. Let's, by unanimous consent, approve the September minutes. Is there any objection among the board members?
Just to clarify, I am now looking at what Eric Simon has put right here in front of me. I'm okay with adding this to it because it is public knowledge. There's no comments on his behalf. It looks like he just cut and pasted. Did everybody look at that, what he put up? Are we okay with that? Let's just move on and put that on there.
Why, let me ask, why wouldn't you include it? There's no context to what the motion is. You add on the minutes, the planning minutes in September. That's to give context to what the city was doing. So anybody who can read the minutes gets a better idea. The minutes don't have to be verbatim, but it has to give you an idea of what was going on, what was discussed. And so my question is, if you don't want to add them, I'd like to know why not? What's the rub?
All right. We're going to have a vote on accepting the minutes. You can accept the minutes as written or reject them. And if we are not in agreement and don't have a majority agreeing to the minutes as written, then we shall entertain amendments to them. All in favor of accepting the minutes as written, raise your hands, please.
This is not the proper procedure.
Hey, Eric, I'm gonna mute you.
Not, it is not the proper procedure.
All in favor, raise your hand. One,
Scott, do you see it? Do you see,
Four,
I
five.
I raised it. Can you see?
Catherine, I didn't see if you raised your hand.
Yeah, that's because I'm kind of conflicted about this. I was hoping to not participate. I don't really have a dissenting or affirming opinion either way on this topic.
Okay, so are you not voting then?
Yeah.
I'm abstaining as well. I have no idea about those minutes. I wasn't at the meeting and I
Okay.
have no context. Sorry.
1, 2, 3, 4. David, did you vote to accept
Yes.
the minutes?
Positive.
Okay. All objecting to the minutes? Abstaining? Three abstaining, okay. We have a majority, it passes.
I just want to let you know, Scott, I will be filing a complaint against
October minutes,
you. Are off the wall. You really are.
October 2021 minutes. Does anybody have any suggestions for changes? No? Entertaining a motion to accept the October 2021 minutes. David?
Yes, I've read the minutes and I move that we accept the October 2021 minutes as written.
Okay, all in favor of accepting the minutes? Raise your hand. 5, 6, 7, 8. Linda, you are allowed to accept the minutes even though you weren't at the meeting. If you can certainly abstain if you want to.
Yeah, I'll abstain like I did for the last one.
Yeah, sorry. Just-
I wasn't there. I can't comment.
And Stephen as well.
yes.
Okay. David, do you, minutes passed, did you get everyone that voted for and against accepting the minutes?
Yes.
December 2021,
Move that we accept.
okay. By unanimous consent, everyone was at that meeting that is here. Does anybody have an objection to those minutes? No? Okay, minutes accepted. Thank you. Board emails exchanged this month. I can't think of any emails in particular. Eric did mention something about adding something to the minutes. Does somebody remember anything else that we may have discussed that should be disclosed to the public? No? Okay, moving on. Small grants.
Thank you, Scott. I appreciate you going early. I was able to buy myself a little bit more time tonight, though I'll have to log off early at some point, but thank you so much. So an update on the small grant. We submitted the application and it is currently up for review. We've been told that they will get back to us no later than February 11th. But I know it's been a while since we actually showed you a little bit of what this looked like, and I wanted to see, Scott, I'm not sure, I think I can share my screen just to show the front and the back of the card. The front of the card, just as a reminder, is all complete. It was completed last year by a student at the high school, and we were so excited for her. She came through with this, so I'm going to show you the front of the card as just a reminder. The back of the card that we submitted is actually part of the application that we received some feedback on earlier when I submitted it, just for kind of like a preliminary review. And so it's been kind of cleaned up and pared down a bit, and Linda was so great. She jumped right in and put the back of this card together. So what you see, what I'm going to show you, is sort of just a mock version of it. We're open for feedback, and I think when they make the decision about whether or not we've received the grant, they'll give us some feedback, and that's probably the point at which we can kind of talk about what else we might want to go on there. The other thing too, just to sort of think about, and again, this will be something to talk about after we find out if we've even received it, is that Linda and I were kind of thinking that it may be a great idea to incorporate some sort of incentive. This was also tossed around in the last version of this card around Goose Holidays. But we were thinking, so you'll see on the back of the card, and she put this on there, it's great, is maybe we offer some sort of a banner or a flag from GHFL for the certain number of people who register between, when they get the card and X date that we maybe pick. And from that, we can pick a lottery and send somebody something. So just something for GHFL to think about. I wrote in the grant that we weren't asking for money for that would be a decision from GHFL. If we don't want to do that, we'll find something else to go on that card. Or I might even fund that. I like that idea. So we'll talk about it. But yeah, I'm just going to share my screen. So give me 1 second here. Oh, I can't share my screen.
Right now.
Try now. Yeah, perfect. Okay, great. So this is the front of the card that Lark designed last year. Again, we sent her a letter, and we actually sent that letter in with the application so that the committee could see that we've been working on this for quite some time now. This is probably the 3rd or 4th iteration of this. So here's the back of the card that Linda put together. So this white part, you kind of have to think of it like a postcard that you get in the mail, so it doesn't have a border on there, but you can kind of see some of the language that we've had on here. Let's see if I can make this bigger. There we go. We got some feedback from, I'm going to admit Vadim into the group. I just got a notification that he wants to come in, so. We got some feedback, and so what you're seeing on here is language that was part of the feedback, things that was sort of like what people would learn from the back of the card and what we would want them to do. So again, we can talk about this more when we figure out what the plan is and if we've received that money. But Linda, thank you so much. This is not my area, this back part, and she really jumped in and put this together in just a little bit of time. So it was great. Thank you so much. I really appreciated it.
Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah, you can see the application too, just for anybody's sake. The application is pretty lengthy. It was kind of an interesting process. You learn a lot about what you need and what kind of information go on these things, because people aren't giving away money for nothing. So.
Well, that's great. Catherine, thank you so much. How much money did we ask for?
We asked for, here, let me just stop sharing my screen. I can tell you the exact amount just because I don't want to show some of we asked for $2,175, and the total came to $2,174.50. And that's with everything all together. So hopefully they don't hold that 50 cents against me.
Great. Well, thank you. Do we know when we can expect word back from the grant committee?
Yeah, so they've shared that it'll be no later than February 11th. I think they have a meeting and then some kind of a vote on it. So hopefully not too far from now. I'm excited though. This project's been a long time coming. I was glad to turn it in, and hopefully it'll be accepted. But if not, there's maybe something else that we can do with it at some other point in time or in some other place.
So can I ask you, Catherine, where does that link take you on that backside? Like when somebody takes a photo shot of that link, does it link them to the GHFL, or what does that do?
Yeah, it links them to, oh, sorry, Linda, go ahead.
Yeah, it links you. It's a QR code for the the page that says how to sign up, the Goose Hollow Foothills League page.
Okay, great. Welcome to the 21st century.
Yeah, it's cool, huh?
Yes.
Bridget, do you have a question, or are you giving us a high five?
Well, I was just going to ask who put the QR code on there, because I think that's really, really important and relevant, because it is how younger audiences are going to be directed to our site. So whoever did that, give them a raise.
Absolutely. That was not me. I was more the word person. I can't do that other stuff. It was a good match. It looks like there's a couple questions. I think there's some raised hands. Michelle Bird.
Yeah, I saw that it said Goose Holidays this year was in June. I thought it was supposed to be October of every year.
I think that was just probably a filler, Michelle. We started with this a while ago. So the review committee, or at least the member who's reviewing preliminarily, has looked at this, and I think we just haven't updated that date.
Oh, okay, my bad.
No, that's not your bad at all.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's very little information about what we're going to be doing in 2022 for Goose Holidays. Obviously we would love to do it, but there's so many issues between now and then that maybe we can't anticipate, but we fully want to do it if we can. I doubt it will be as early as June. But it probably won't be as late as October like it was this past year, simply because it's nice to have daylight, and the sun goes down pretty early back then, and it's also not as warm. So maybe we'll try for September or possibly August. But
Okay, cool.
we'll form a committee. Are you interested in being a part of any committee that would be formed to organize that, Michelle? No pressure.
Not at this. I can't think of any right now, but I'll keep you posted.
Sherry, do you have your hand up?
I just, I love the card. There's a coffee mug with the goose on it. Would it be okay to put Goose Hollow in there?
Goose Hollow in where?
The postcard, there's a coffee cup with the goose, which is what they use at the Goose Hollow Inn.
Oh,
And, to just, they have the bridge there, they have the Rose Garden, they have the Vista Bridge. And so, they have the coffee cup with the logo for the Goose Hollow Inn. Would it be okay to put the Goose Hollow in there?
well, I think, let me just share my screen, Sherry. Do you mean this coffee mug right here?
Yeah, it says pinch out for, but yeah, that's, they have similar mugs to that have that goose on it. And I think it would be really nice, to sort of put a plug in for the Goose Hollow Inn. In my opinion, it's probably the closest thing we have to a community center in our neighborhood.
Oh,
And if you're new to the neighborhood and you see a cup with the goose, I mean, I know it means the Goose Hollow Inn, and that's what they serve. It's actually doesn't look quite like that, but it's sort of like that. It's a brown, or a tan color, and it has the goose in it.
Yeah.
So I mean, the other ones this says Goose Hollow, and they have the Rose Garden, and they have Washington Park and Vista Bridge and Providence Park, and you've got the mug with the goose on it. But could we put like just above there, just like you have on the Rose Garden, or underneath, or side, or whatever?
Oh, I see what you mean, Sherry. Well, this is somebody's artwork. So we've kind of already, this was like what she submitted to us, and we picked this one as the winner. So I don't really quite feel comfortable altering the front of it. But if we get the grant and it comes back, maybe the back of the card is something that we could kind of talk about as that comes up and is needed.
The reason I bring that up is because one of the things that I have been concerned about during this pandemic, and I'm sure everyone else has too, we've lost a lot of beloved businesses throughout Portland due to the pandemic. And, putting a plug in for the Goose Hollow Inn, and people, you could, just sort of advertising, you can go over there. It's part of your community. It's the history of Bud Clark there, just sort of a plug for the local business over there. There's the Goose Hollow Inn, there's the flower shop, there's I think a beauty shop above the flower shop. Anyway, it's just a thought I had. It doesn't, not cast in concrete. It was just a thought to try and help our business folks out over there.
Yeah.
All right, Catherine, is that it?
Yeah, Lydia, is there anything else that we haven't covered?
No, I think when we get the grant, we can just go crazy on the back.
And thank you guys very much for, obviously it's a lot of work putting this together. Thank you.
Happy
I think
to.
that's also motivation for organizing the neighborhood picnic and Goose Hollow Days, if we're going to do it earlier or sooner rather than later, so that we can have a date to put on there.
Yeah,
People
absolutely.
excited about maybe either joining the organization or continuing to be involved. So
Yeah.
it's all good.
I I have one question related to that. I understand from Tracy that lovely couple from that church has left and they've gone somewhere else. And they planned really 2 years in a row and did a phenomenal job. Has anyone become the recipient of all that information with all of the phone numbers and the packet with all of the, all of the information about the vendors? Where is all that information now?
So just to update everybody, Dan and Melody Rose, so Dan is the pastor for Zion Lutheran Church, has taken another position in Fresno. And he has a lot of family in Fresno. His wife grew up there. And so they decided to move, and they are currently looking, they're going to have a lay pastor in the interim, and they're looking for, a new pastor to take over. But they're, we are still in contact with them. I don't think we have all of their information, but I'm sure that we can get it from them. And there's a lot of the motivated members of Zion Lutheran who are very helpful in organizing it. So hopefully it won't be too hard a transition to move over to the new population that's over there. But, it is a big loss for the neighborhood because they've been great in helping us run that event. So I hear you. So yes, we went to kind of their going away party this past weekend. It was very, that it actually was a roast for Dan. So it was like his brother and his friends, his college friends standing up there and telling us all the gory details about his life. So it was a nice event. But they'll be sorely missed.
Yeah.
All right, with that, Tiffany, why don't you go ahead and tell us about the 6 core neighborhoods, this CN, is it CNSAG? CNSAG? How are we going to contract it? How do you pronounce it?
Yeah, let's start off with a good chuckle. Before I get started, just want to clarify that we're under the Neighbors West Northwest Zoom account. And if you haven't noticed already, there's no chat feature, so we cannot communicate to each other or clarify. So we'll have to rely on holding our hands up and sharing information. Usually we drop things in the link. So when I go ahead to talk about the next topic, please raise your hand for clarification if you can't use the chat. I asked Anastasia today because last night we hosted the safety livability meeting and I used this account and there was no chat feature. It was deactivated. She says that sometimes because we share the same account, someone goes ahead of us and changes the settings. And then once you start this meeting, you cannot ask for the chat feature back. So hopefully it's not a problem for us tonight, but when we go to start our Zoom meeting next go around, I would love to reactivate that feature. I don't know about all of you, but that's a form of communication to us, a polite form of communication and clarification and sharing information too. So, okay, 6 core neighborhood safety action group. That's the acronym CNSAG. Tonight, when I come to the board, I'm going to explain to you and clarify to you what this means, where it started, where it is today, and a couple concerns and clarifications. So let me start off first. As you all know, it was a really rough last year for us neighborhoods in the downtown area, where 6 of us neighborhoods are in close proximity to us. That's Goose Hollow, Northwest District, Pearl District, Old Town Community Association, and Downtown, and also Southwest Hills. We were going through such a hard time, and we realized that we all shared similar situations in regards to public safety and livability concerns. So under PSAC, which is the Public Safety Action Coalition, we put together in front of the group, asked the neighborhoods to come together and openly talk about, like a roundtable discussion of some of the struggles of the neighborhoods, because we have elected officials in the room and board members to lean on and just talk openly about the 6 neighborhoods that were struggling. And out of that, each neighborhood had a public safety chair, or say 2 public safety chairs, like a they would come over and just dialogue about issues. And it became helpful. Really, it did. Because if you look back, Neighbors West Northwest Coalition, we used to do a round table once a month at those meetings where the neighborhoods collectively, all 13 neighborhoods, if that's the right number, would come together and talk about issues of each other's neighborhoods for commonality and understand what the other respective neighborhood is going through. But it wasn't happening last year. And I don't know why. And maybe we should get back to that. Anyway, so coming to PSAC, talking with other neighbors really helped build trust, relationship, and just kind of talking about issues, and we could work collectively together. So as the last 6 months came along, many of you noticed at this board that if I saw something that was worthy of our time of another neighborhood next to us, for example, Downtown Neighborhood Association or Pearl District, they would write letters in regards to public safety or livability concerns. And I would bring it back to the board and say, hey, you know what? This letter looks pretty something that maybe Goose Hollow should maybe support, and write a cover letter and support our respective neighbors on this issue because it also impacts our neighborhood. And so, and you saw that in the past, I've done that with the letters, and I think Vadim Mazursky, my co-partner as well, came to the board for approval on those letters because we don't want our neighborhoods working in silos. Anyway, so in the last couple months, the neighborhoods really did a good job of communicating to each other. And what we started doing was sharing our safety livability monthly time slots over Zoom, where the 6 neighborhoods were together. And one of the neighborhoods would host the meeting. And Pearl District, thank gosh for Pearl District, they would host most of those meetings because we recognized it's such a hard time for all of us in this neck of the woods. And then we decided that Pearl District was carrying the weight of hosting these calls. And so now the 6 neighborhoods rotate around with the conference calls. And one is, Goose Hollow Foothills League hosted this month's. Next month will be Downtown Neighborhood Association. Why I bring up the shared safety livability meetings is because when neighborhoods come together, we realized that sharing our safety livability meetings brings transparency and working together. And so that came out of this group, this 6 core neighborhood. Now, Dan Lenzen of Old Town Community Association really liked the 6 core neighborhoods and gave it, I call it the 6 core because we are, if you see the news, we are the core neighborhoods of Portland. We are the heart of Portland, these neighborhoods right here. Many of the other 94 neighborhoods watch our neighborhoods. And so, yeah, it got a nickname, the 6 core, because we were working together, communicating to each other. And Dan Lenzen wanted to make it a little bit more official by calling it CNSAG. I don't even know how to pronounce it. I wasn't around for this logo design or what have you name. It's called 6 Core Neighborhood Safety Action Group. In all transparency, I think it's a really nice logo. And people ask whether this is a private meeting or a public meeting, and it came under the PSAC private meeting. And I do not want our neighborhood association thinking that things are happening behind closed doors. These are just neighborhoods or not representatives of neighborhoods. These are residents of neighborhoods coming together and dialoguing. No decisions are being made, and they need to come back to the board for approval. So, I gave you a perspective of the past and currently what's going on. And now I have to be transparent with you that in the last, looks like November 22nd of 2021, a letter went out on behalf of Northwest District referencing the work of the 6 core neighborhoods dialoguing and communicating together. And they did use the logo, which is pretty. And they did reference our neighborhoods. And I gave you all the letter to look at. And I hope that you had a moment to look it over because I need to apologize. It looks like the meat of the letter, it looks good. It shows neighborhoods or residents concerned with trash cleanup, the city's BDS, wasn't picking up, the trash haulers weren't doing their job effectively. And Northwest District and Pearl District were not happy at all with the process of the city and removing trash from the public cans. As you see downtown, many of the public trash cans are spilling over. So of course, in my opinion, I was like, well, that is a good idea. Yes, we should support our neighbors because we don't want to see trash cans overspilling everywhere we look. What I failed to do is realize that when they wrote a letter to Andrea Durbin, who's the director of Bureau of Planning and Sustainability, and Quentin Bauer, who's the public trash collection program manager, they signed it with the Goose Hollow Neighborhood Association. And I did not get approval from the board for that. And I want to clarify, they did not use our proper name. We are Goose Hollow Foothills League. So I didn't see this. And I'm sorry, everyone. You have the letter and it will not happen again. And if any letters are to be addressed with the Goose Hollow Foothills League, it needs to be approved by the board first. And just to make clear, this letter, you have it in your possession. It did go out. It did get a response from the city, which is right here, dated December 23rd by Andrea Durbin. And it said, "Good morning, Rob, who is a resident of Northwest District. Thank you for reaching out with us with your concerns regarding collection of public trash cans in our neighborhoods and your constructive input. BPS staff are working closely with the haulers to address their performance issues and ensure any missed containers are collected as soon as possible. We encourage our community members to report any full containers to us so they can be taken care of. We are currently using American Rescue Plan funds to replace the undersized containers with new containers that have twice the capacity. This includes 14 cans in downtown, 10 in the Pearl District, and additionally, Northwest Parking District will get 42 new ones at 65-gallon containers to replace the smaller 35-gallon concrete rounds on Northwest 21st and Northwest 23rd. They'll be replaced by mid-February. We're excited also to welcome a new staff member as our community cleanup coordinator in mid-January as well. This position will support the public trash can program and will allow for increased monitoring of problem locations. Please reach out again." So I want to clarify this letter that Northwest District sent out. In all transparency, the decision to send out a letter happened at our shared safety livability with our public. So our residents and everybody saw this, the dialogue between Quentin Bauer, Commissioner Myron was there, our Goose Hollow co-public safety chairs were there. We saw all of the neighborhoods upset about trash spilling everywhere, and we supported our Northwest neighbors. We just didn't realize that the letter would go out with the improper, process that should have gone through Goose Hollow Foothills League. So I apologize today. I would like to open this up to questions of the board for clarification going forward.
Hey, Tiffany, I think maybe we should have a broader discussion about board member action when they're involved in a group that may result in the Goose Hollow name being used. Because, frankly, as a lot of people probably know, since I'm the representative of Neighbors West Northwest, Tiffany being the backup, we're faced with issues which affect our neighborhood either directly or indirectly. And they hold discussions and they hold votes and things like that. And in the past, we've been very coy about voting or, giving our input on certain policy decisions. And that's really kind of how we've cut the line. So if it's kind of an internal decision on the operation of Neighbors West Northwest, we're allowed to vote. If it's a policy decision which affects our neighborhood, then we need to go back to the neighborhood and get permission for that vote. Just by way of example, so I'm glad that Alan Clausen is here because, as you've probably been reading in the Northwest Examiner, there's been real blow up of the issue with Alan being able to attend the Neighbors Northwest meetings, and a motion was raised to stop doing business for Neighbors West Northwest to stop doing business with the Northwest Examiner and to not have Alan be able to attend any of the meetings. And I thought that that was kind of an internal matter rather than a policy matter that would affect our neighborhood. And so I voted no, which was I think the right decision, but most of the other neighborhoods voted yes, which is why Alan wasn't able to attend the meeting. They've since reversed that, and I'll go ahead and report on that because that was in the January meeting that we just had last week. But the question is, if people disagree with me for voting no, we could be faced with the same problem. Hey, Scott, you didn't come to the board and get approval for that particular vote. And it's a real issue because a lot of times these issues are raised and need to be acted upon very quickly. And the question is just how much rope do we give the representative and to represent our interests at that meeting? Do they need to come back to the board for every decision that's made or not? And I see that Vadim, I'm glad that Vadim has raised his hand because I'm sure he has a lot more knowledge about this now that he's running for city council. And maybe I would like to hear your input on kind of how you think that we should operate as an organization so that we're acting properly.
Oh, okay, I'm next. So here was my thought process when I joined the group. My understanding was that we were there in our individual capacities, representing ourselves basically, but also having been sitting on various other organizations. Originally, this kind of came through the Public Safety Action Coalition, or that's kind of how I was introduced to it, and also working with Goose Hollow, of course. So this was never like a Neighbors West Northwest where it was officially a public entity with representatives from other public entities. It was just individuals concerned about similar matters, sharing same ideas, sharing work products, and so on. The error that I think both Tiffany and I made here is when the letter went out, we didn't check to see how it was signed. In the past, it was always like Vadim Mazursky, Tiffany, and I think there was only one other thing that we ever did, but it was in our personal capacities as also sitting on other boards and organizations and things like that. The reason I say this is twofold. One, in no way did anybody intend to represent that Goose Hollow had the same views that we had when we wrote those letters. And two, in no way do we want to make it seem like this is a public entity that is either sponsored or not by the city or otherwise. It's a group of individuals who sit on various boards and organizations that are meeting to share ideas and once again, not reinvent the wheel, which we were doing a lot in our different capacities. And so I don't know if that makes any difference in your mind. In my mind, it does differentiate between, following the process for voting and all the rest of the stuff that would entail if it was in our representational capacities versus personal capacities.
Yeah, it sounds good to me. Does anybody else have any other thoughts on this?
I was just going to say, I thought that the way both Tiffany and Vadim kind of explained the situation made total sense to me. And it is kind of murky, but just as my 2 cents, we trust you to represent yourselves, but also us. And I would imagine that if you had brought it to vote and we brought it to vote now, we all would have wanted to be on that letter. And as these things come, it's good that we talk about it. But we appreciate you dialing into those meetings and representing us. So I just want to say thank you for dialing into that stuff and also for explaining all of this so articulately, and keep up the good fight. We appreciate you.
Absolutely.
Could I just add one additional thing, which is not on, it's not on this topic, but did Vadim, I saw your letter to the editor on the 9th, and I was wondering if, if other people saw it too. Yeah, so it's not related to this, but we have an articulate and distinguished member on our board that was published in the Oregonian.
Thank you. And actually, the way Sherry and I met initially was we met at a Goose Hollow meeting, Goose Hollow Foothills League meeting, but we spoke about disability issues at that point in time. This was before I was a member of the board. And I wrote a letter because the auditor put out 2 scathing reports about disability issues in Portland and how our city was not getting input from disability community when making decisions, and also not doing adequate preparation for emergency planning, and not really adhering to ADA, the ADA law when dealing with disability related issues. Two very scathing reports, in my opinion, that did not receive much traction at all. No response from the city, no press conferences about it. We're hearing a lot. I'm hearing a lot in the city about people with disabilities having a hard time walking our sidewalks because of ADA noncompliance and other things that are being ignored by our city. So I wrote a letter to the editor talking about the need to actually address the auditor's reports, and also to reinstate the Portland Commission on Disability, which I think that part might have been left out of the final copy, but nonetheless, that's an avenue for disability community to have input on public decisions, which I was on the Disability Commission back in the day. But in any case, thank you, Sherry.
You're very welcome. You know, one of the things is that we participated in the GHFL was trying to prevent the closure of that stop, and you know, for the Mac stop, and one person after the other with disabilities were complaining, and they, you know, and the city's response to it was, well, you can just walk over, you know, to the Goose Hollow Inn. And this woman who's was in a I guess a motorized chair was explaining how the sidewalk is cracked, how that she just physically cannot do it. And they were just cold as ice. I mean, they just got no traction at all. I mean, it's just shocking, really.
All right. I know Linda probably has some points of view, and keep in mind what we're trying to come up with is at least an informal policy for representatives when we're representing either Goose Hollow interests, or we're kind of the noted representative from our neighborhood, how we should act as representatives of the neighborhood. When should we take part in decisions? When should we come back to the board? Linda, go ahead, and we'll go to Eric and then Jerry.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I think Vadim, you brought up a really good point, that when we go to these meetings, you view yourself as a person, you know, you're representing yourself. I think coming back to the board for a vote for every decision I'm a practical person, is really just untenable. Things will slow down to a grinding halt, and we don't want to see that happen. I think people are elected to the board, and it's a responsibility to keep the board informed. But I just don't see this sort of back and forth being very practical.
I agree.
It's a good point, and that was the consideration. One is we're meeting initially from a nonprofit. That was how it was started, but also you know, how do we be nimble about the things that we discuss and work on if we make it a public meeting and have it with votes, and then go back to the individual commission, as if we're representatives of our individual neighborhood associations, then we have to have 6 votes through 6 different neighborhood associations, and we never get anything done. So it was decided early on that we were not representatives, we were not acting in representative capacity, but individual capacity, but also the fact that we sit on various organizations. So that you hit the nail on the head, Linda. That was one of the main considerations there, and we're trying to balance all that. And at the same time, there was this error made, and that we didn't look at the signature blank when this went out, and it should have never been that way.
Well,
Yeah, I think maybe that's just kind of maybe the one thing that we should look at, which is if Goose Hollow is going to be named in the letter in the signature line, that's probably something we should go back to the board with. And, you know, it was in, like, I almost measured it. It's like 3-point font or something like that, Tiffany. I mean, I almost needed a magnifying glass to read our own neighborhood name, and it was wrong.
And just to clarify, our neighborhood was misrepresented. The name was incorrect, as well as another association on there. So I think we came together at that Zoom meeting, and we were all, yes, we support you. And then Commissioner Myron and Quentin said, give us a letter. And we're like, yeah, go for it. And it snuck past me, and it is my fault. And I would have never had us misrepresented. We're Goose Hollow Foothills League. And I'm sorry, everyone. That's my fault.
Don't beat yourself up about it, Tiffany. I know your heart is in the right in this and in the right place. Eric?
Well, and this, I've spoken to Tiffany about this in the past, whether it's in a letter or whether you're speaking publicly. And I'll use Tiffany as an example because she's also on the PSAC board. When she's at PSAC, she can then come back to us, but she then has to tell us she went to the PSAC meeting as a private individual, so that it's very clear and evident from the beginning she's an individual there and not representing Goose Hollow Foothills League. If it turns out that there's an issue, say with PSAC, where they want to get neighborhood involvement, then she would obviously have to come back to us. I had a situation where I sent a letter to the Department of Justice to get clarification on an issue. And I had signed it with my name and then GHFL and NWNW, and a complaint was filed through NWNW. And I apologize. To err is human until you learn the procedures. But it's just very important and paramount that you always differentiate when you're at various meetings or if you're on multiple committees, that you're speaking at either as a representative as an individual who lives in Goose Hollow, or if you're representing PSAC or Old Town Chinatown. And it's unfortunately, it's like hearing the record over and over again, but sometimes you have to say that at every meeting so that everybody has clarification right from the beginning and will not make any assumptions.
Yeah, even Tracy has run into this problem. When there has been kind of consensus, maybe not even a vote, but just kind of consensus about a particular position that the neighborhood would take, and then she shows up at city council and talks about it and states that she's the president of the Goose Hollow neighborhood or Goose Hollow Foothills League or what have you. In my view, if the neighborhood has taken a position, then you can go ahead and say that, at least express that you have a certain position in the neighborhood. You serve on the board or something like that. And you can say, I'm on the board, but I'm testifying in my own personal capacity. But this is, what I'm about to say has been approved by the board through motions or what have you. So it's kind of a sticky wicket. And frankly, if you haven't run afoul of this, I mean, Eric did, and, he takes it very seriously, then, you probably haven't served on the board long enough. It's like COVID, you're eventually going to get it. Jerry, what do you have to say?
Yeah, Scott, it's certainly not a new issue. Everyone that has ever served on a public agency or as a member of a public group and wishes to go into the public with their own opinion, they have to identify it as their own opinion and not the opinion of the group. It's I was on a member of the committee that wrote the first goals and guidelines for neighborhood associations. I was also on the group that wrote the last series of goals and guidelines, the so-called Great Committee. We also rewrote the ordinance. This was one of the things that was on top of our mind at all times, is that if you don't identify yourself as speaking as an individual and avoid identifying your group, although many commissioners, if you're speaking to the city council, are going to already know that you're a member of the group, you're risking identifying the group as being an advocate for whatever it is that you said. And while it might be a perfectly good thing, it can open you up to numerous attacks from people of different opinions. And worse, actually, when I do this, I don't care if somebody attacks me. I don't want them to be attacking the group, because that's a whole different kettle of worms.
Yeah.
Thanks.
All right. Does anybody have any other points to make on this particular issue? You know, we'll keep practicing until we get it right, but we're human. All right. Thank you for bringing this up, Tiffany. I appreciate your work. Stephen, I unfortunately skipped over your treasurer's report. Did you want to just make a brief report?
Sure, I can do that. Just pull up the numbers again. Sorry. So ending balance in the checking account is $14.32.82, and ending balance in the business savings account is $5,125.89. And I can text that or email that to the secretary to make it a bit easier.
Okay.
And the bottle drop is the same as last month at $106. I have not yet transferred signatories on the account. Bridget did a magnificent job in handing over, but I'm heading to Australia tomorrow morning, and I'm frantically running around like a headless chicken. So I have not become the new. I also needed the minutes to show that I was the new treasurer. So now that I have those, I can dash off. Second I get back from Australia.
Are you accompanying John there? Is that what?
Yeah, I'm dropping John off at university.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Great. We'll have a great trip.
Thank you.
So Stephen, did that mean that the balance has not changed since last month?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Any questions about the Treasury report? All right. We'll move on to Madeira, Maine. Let me just go ahead and give a brief summary and then turn it over to Jerry. Madeira, Maine, as you probably all know, is a 17-story project with 336 residential units on the block just south of the Mac parking garage. It essentially takes up the entire block. Like I said, it's 17 stories tall. It's one of the most massive, if not the most massive, apartment buildings in the entire city. The neighborhood voted to oppose the project. We made several appearances in front of the design commission. The design commission accepted the project. The neighborhood voted to appeal it to city council. We appeared in front of city council. City council had a 4-to-1 vote rejecting our appeal. And we just got the official notice of that rejection and acceptance of the project on the 18th, which starts the 21-day appeal process running if we want to appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals, LUBA. So that's where we are. We're in that time period where we need to discuss and decide whether it makes sense to file an appeal on this project. Jerry?
Thanks, Scott. Okay, the appeal is elegantly written, or the rather the findings of the city council. A little aside, the city attorney's office doesn't have anybody that writes that well. It's got the fingerprints of an attorney that we know well all over it, and she's the best in town. There's not a lot of room in those findings to launch an appeal. We're still thinking about it. I got a note this afternoon from Dan Cairns, our attorney, the Friends of Goose Hollow attorney. And he's saying, yeah, there are some real downsides. There's a mid 2000s, well, actually, a 10-year-old opinion court case actually in Medford that pretty much kills us. It supersedes an older Milwaukee opinion that we were kind of counting on, but I think Dan's right that we might be dead in the water. We're still working on it. There are, the biggest issues that we see are the fact that the code as approved by council and as interpreted by certainly the developer and agreed with by the city staff is in conflict with the comprehensive plan that's so very recently approved by that same city council and planning commission. So faced with that, the old rule was that you basically just can't approve a project relying on a code that does not follow with your own comprehensive plan or is in conflict with it. The new rule is that, well, the elected officials, quote, quote, the electeds can do pretty much whatever they want to do. And as long as it conforms with a clear interpretation of the code, the way it's written, then they can get away with it. It's fine. The question that we have to confront right now, and that is going to be a discussion between myself, Sean, Scott, Dan, and maybe whoever else we can pull into the discussion for further illumination, is whether it's worth going into the issue with LUBA, or in front of LUBA, that contests the reasoning that LUBA used, well, actually that the Court of Appeals used in upholding a Medford decision that's only 10 years old. The legal scholars, the guys that do appellate law, are going to have a lot of fun trying to figure this one out.
So if I can kind of tie a bow on the issues here, we have until what I think February 8th to file an appeal. It costs money to do so. There's money being paid to an attorney, but I believe Friends of Goose Hollow has raised money to engage them, and Dan Kearns has been very helpful in that area. But there is one downside with going forward with an appeal, and that is possible attorney's fees if they decide that there's no reason for the appeal, not just that you would lose, but it was a specious claim to appeal to LUBA. So there is a possible downside to losing a case if you go in front of LUBA. There is, as you might remember, the planning committee does have executory authority to do something like this, but with the downside, the possible downside of having to pay attorney's fees, such a decision of going forward with an appeal honestly would have to go in front of the full board. And I wouldn't have it any other way. Jerry, how do you feel about that?
Oh, I fully agree. The downside of losing an appeal and getting ruled against as a frivolous appellant would be extreme.
Yeah.
And the question, well, there are multiple questions. It's sort of a cascade of questions. First of all, is there a reasonable grounds for an appeal, given the findings that Ms. White wrote so very ably, and then if there is grounds for that appeal, can we make a good enough argument that it actually makes makes Luba sit back and say, oh, well, here is a question that we really need to look at. If we can't do that, then the risk ratio just escalates.
Yeah.
So this is not something that anybody's taking lightly. We're certainly not going to launch an appeal frivolously, because besides looking bad and taking up a whole bunch of time that nobody needs to spend, it could be very expensive.
Yeah. Let me just make 2 more points and then we'll go to Eric. The 2 points are that as you may have seen around our neighborhood, and if you've checked our development map that we have posted on our website, there are quite a few projects that have been approved that were never built. So it's possible that this would be one of those, but you have 2 interested parties. You have the MAC and you also have the developer. And so the chances are probably much lower that they won't go forward with this project. The other issue is that because this project is so big and so much larger than the site is normally zoned for, it's an RM4 project, that in order to get that added bulk, they need to enter into an agreement with a historic property that has seismic issues. They haven't been seismically upgraded. So I'm not sure if Zion Lutheran fits that category, but they would essentially have to, the developer would have to enter into a contract with that sort of historic property to essentially buy their air rights. And that money would go toward upgrading their seismic stability of their historic building. So there is a lot of square footage that needs to be purchased. I'm not sure how many sellers there are out there with historic properties that haven't already been upgraded, but it is possible that they would have so much difficulty finding the square footage that they need that would either delay or cancel the project. I suspect, though, given all the money that they've already invested in the design work, that they already have ideas, leads, or even a tentative agreement with historic properties where they can buy that far. That's all I have to say. Eric?
Yeah, I'm curious. First, I mean, as a neighborhood association, I know when we appealed to the city council, we didn't have to pay a fee. We were allowed to go forward with it. So my question would be, what is the fee to go forward to Luba? And what would be the approximate cost range regarding hiring an attorney?
I'll take on that one. Eric, the simple answer is we don't know. And that's one of the first things to figure out. Well, actually, the first thing to figure out is if a cogent appeal can be launched. The second thing to figure out is what in the heck would it cost? So you're right. It's a pressing question. It's probably the second question to ask.
Well, the other thing would be, because I know Friends of Goose Hollow is involved in this as well. Are they a pretty well-heeled organization? I know in the past, they were pretty well funded to fight some of these things through the years. Unfortunately, GHFL has relatively limited resources when you're talking about hiring attorneys and depositions and all this other stuff.
Yeah, the Friends of Goose Hollow is footing the bill for the legal work so far. After the city appeal, which we lost, of course, there's remaining a balance in the war chest that Friends of Goose Hollow sits on. It's not enough to launch a full-on Luba appeal. We have been promised support from an anonymous source to do that. The question is, without having, until we can actually show that we have a reasonable appeal, can we actually go back to that person and say, yeah, okay, it's time to pony up. So, yeah, we kind of have our hand out in one sense, but we have a verifiable source of funding to go ahead if we have something to go ahead with.
Well, let me ask you, if, from what you had mentioned or Scott had mentioned, that there's a deadline for us to appeal. So will you need to take a vote today to be able to go forward with the appeal? Because even if the planning committee meets, that's what, the first Wednesday of next month?
So Eric, I'll answer that. The answer is, since we don't know what it's going to cost, we could take a vote and say, if it's going to cost the neighborhood zero, and there's a recommendation that we move forward with the appeal, and there's a zero chance that we will be found as having filed a specious appeal and thus have to pay the other side's attorney's fees, then we approve the appeal. We can take that sort of vote, but we're kind of shooting in the dark. So I wouldn't want to entertain a motion yet, simply because we don't have the details ready. It's possible.
You mentioned this has to be done by February 8th, I believe.
Yes, so we would have to make a decision. We would have to do research in the next week, and most likely have a fast meeting that is noticed to the public so that we can take a vote if we get to that point. But we're pretty far from having to need to do that.
So a meeting will be held, a special meeting, I guess, as opposed to planning, to ascertain whether it's worthwhile to pursue this.
That is my recommendation, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Catherine, and then Linda, and then we can go ahead and move on.
Yeah, thank you. I was wondering, just going back to the airspace, and how that is still a thing. When is that issue going to be resolved? Like, when will we find out that they have in fact found somebody to purchase air rights from?
Yeah, I honestly, I don't know. Jerry, do you know when that is even required? I know before they get a building permit that they need to have that. And it has to be, a solid agreement, not, an actual written legal agreement to do it. And the money has to be used for, it's not a windfall to the organization. It has to be used for seismic upgrades, which for a building like Zion Lutheran, for instance, would be enormously expensive.
Is that the only historic building that's in the range of what they need to?
Not at all.
No, I'm just using that as an example. It could be anywhere in the city, but the idea is that this is an exception that they
Anything in
have.
the historic district is eligible. So it can, as long as it is a contributing structure in the historic district, it's also available. And there is there's an apartment house in the historic district that is a contributing structure, but not necessarily a landmark structure, that has applied for a permit to do a very expensive seismic upgrading and it has actually angered a number of the condo owners, and that one has me kind of concerned.
Yeah. Do you, Jerry, this is maybe a little bit in the weeds, I'm just curious, but do you know what year threshold they're looking at? Like what's the longevity of a building that may not have seismic upgrades? I guess that's not really clear. I guess what I'm looking for is my building was built in 1962. I'm wondering what the threshold is where they go back and look.
There isn't one.
Oh, well,
let's
check out the Four Seasons.
Right. There are different levels of seismic upgrades that are necessary depending on what the structural, what the structure of the building is. There are different standards for unreinforced masonry buildings as opposed to post and beam buildings. To answer that question definitively is just impossible.
All right, Linda?
Yeah, I just want to make sure I understand what the issues are. It seems like, first of all, you want to understand whether we have a reasonable grounds to appeal to LUBA. And if we do, then go through with it. And both of them are going to be incurring lawyer fees. Is that correct? If we go through with it and lose, are there additional fees besides the lawyer fees, or we just have, is it just, bad on us for doing that? That was one question. And the second question is, I was looking at the report that was so beautifully written by this lawyer. And then I was looking at all the testimony from the neighborhood. There's a tremendous amount of testimony. And I think that we have an obligation to at least see if we have a case to go against LUBA, because we certainly have a lot of neighbors that are not happy with the design. That's it.
Okay, totally agreed. The question is whether in front of the city council, the issues are kind of a stew between the legal issues and public sentiment and, basically political issues. That always happens in front of the city council. They are our last level of elected public officials, local public officials. When you go to LUBA, you're talking to a state agency that's acting as an appeal court for quasi-judicial, put that in quotes, quasi-judicial issues. They take their job very seriously and generally are more interested in process and whether the local government is following the law or not. Well, the law changes from time to time. That's one of the difficulties in trying to figure out where you are in this stew. And there are some there's some error left in the findings from the city council. Whether it's error that we can exploit and argue in front of LUBA is sufficient to overturn the city's decision, or at least remand the decision back to the city. That's a trickier question, and we don't have very long to figure out whether it's enough of a question to take the risk of filing the LUBA appeal. I don't know if that answers the question or not. The long and short of it is that much of what was testified was very, very valid, but simply not something that is in the criteria that either the design commission or the city council was empowered to decide upon. So no matter how true it is, if it doesn't address the issues that they see under the statutes that they're working with, then it's irrelevant. Sorry, that's the way it is. Our task is to figure out where their decisions left some space to argue that they made the wrong decision.
All right, I think we've kind of discussed, I think it's time to move on. We're already close to 8:30. And the end result is that we need to give some more thought to this, and we'll go ahead and report to the board. And if we need to have a follow-up meeting because we feel it's in the best interest and low risk to file with LUBA, then we'll go ahead and communicate to the board and set up a meeting for that. So stay tuned.
Scott, I just wanted to ask Vadim. Vadim, do you have any opinion on this? Do you think we should appeal or not?
I honestly do not have an opinion on this. This is not the kind of stuff that I've done in the past, and yeah.
No opinion. Okay. It just seems to me, you know, and I'm not a lawyer, and I know that there are people that are lawyers here, and I know there are people like Jerry that have had extensive experience working in the city. My gut level feeling tells me, I mean, we're in the middle of a COVID, that the whole project was predicated on all these events where hundreds of people would show up. And I don't even know if the world in which they're trying to build this structure is even going to exist sometime in the future. It's just, it's so 20th century compared to where we are now. And I don't know if there's any recourse we have, you know, legally, or if it falls into a particular category that can be appealed. I don't know. It just seems to me to be nuts.
Yeah, I don't know the legal aspect of it though, but let me tell you what I've been hearing from the individuals I've been speaking with in the developer world and people in multifamily housing and things like that. So on the one hand, as you probably already know by reading anything or being around, businesses are leaving Portland. We're losing businesses to Washington, Vancouver. We're losing businesses to the suburbs. We're losing businesses to Lake Oswego, and that's going to take a long time to turn around. On the other hand, and this might be a bright spot, people are still moving here, and a lot of people are still moving here, and there's not any new housing being built, and there's going to be another housing crisis probably in about 5 years because there's no new multifamily units that are in the pipeline right now. So if I were to read the tea leaves, I would suspect that there's going to be interest in starting something in the near future that'll be built in like 2 or 3 years, and there's going to be demand for that. So I whatever the calculus might be as to the chances of winning versus the chances of this thing actually being built, I think it'll be built if something doesn't stop it, because there's going to be a need. There's not a need right now, but you know, the way that the low cost housing things worked is there was a lot of construction prior to that being enacted, and then it stopped, and there's not much in the pipeline, and there's going to be a pretty dire need down the road, and I think people are counting on that.
Okay, thank you.
All right, let's go ahead and move to the committee reports. Tiffany, is there anything more to report on public safety, parking, and transportation?
Yes, I just want to let you know that Linda Rankin and I co-hosted yesterday's public safety transportation parking meeting, and we had 29 participants. The call went from 5:30 to 7 and ended promptly. It's recorded, and we can share it with all of you who missed that great informative Zoom meeting. We had guest speaker Keith Wilson, who presented on Built for Zero, and the whole premise of his presentation is we could actually do something about the unsheltered crisis, and he walked through models that are being used and some failed attempts and what have you. Great presentation. So I'm going to somehow try to send you that Zoom recording. It's rather large. I tried to upload it and give it to the Goose Hollow board, but I was not successful. So bear with me. I'm not very techy, but I think it's worth all of your time. And then we had Nicole Marseille O'Donnell. She came as herself. She was not on the agenda, was not aware of her joining our meeting until the last minute. She is running for Sheriff Mike Reese's position. And that was really, really interesting to hear from her. She actually just listened to all of us. And if there was any time at the end of the meeting, you know, people asked her kind of what she was, you know, stand for, and running for that position and any kind of issues in the community that people thought was worth asking her questions. So please, I'll get you that recording on the NWNW web's Zoom account when I get it. Second thing is next month, the next safety livability meeting will be hosted by Downtown Neighborhood Association, and Linda and I will join in on that. I'm not 100% on the date yet, but I think we've been doing an okay job of letting you know advance and giving you a great presentation and agenda to follow. So stay tuned. I do want to bring awareness that during the Zoom meeting yesterday, we had, I pride ourselves on our safety livability meeting where people feel transparency, but also safe in the environment we create. And that is having our neighbors of Goose Hollow come and share their concerns of the neighborhood. Yesterday, Coin News was on the Zoom call, but they did not represent themselves and we did not know they were on the call. And so I had some choice words with Coin today. And I said, you did not let us know you were there. That was creepy. And you didn't. So I think from here out, what I'm going to end up doing is if we have our safety livability meetings, I'm going to announce first thing right off the bat, if you're news media, make yourself known. Do not hide out and video us and then use bits and pieces of people's concerns for your news story with your agenda without letting us know in advance. And so I just want to bring clarity that that happened, and I do not want that to happen to our residents again. If in the past when we have safety livability meetings in person, if the news media came in the room waving their camera around videoing you, you would probably be a little bit more cautious on what you say. And I don't want our Goose Hollow residents also for them to feel fearful of media when they're sharing their concerns, because we did have someone on the call yesterday who was new to or someone that has not been in a Goose Hollow Neighborhood Association committee meeting. They were concerned about a break-in at their place and they were vulnerable. And I'm so thankful that our news did not portray someone's vulnerable side at that moment. That's where, our residents reach out for help. And so I want to make sure that our meetings stay safe for everybody. So from here out, I will always make sure to declare, if you're media, make yourself known, don't be anonymous and don't be sneaky. So there you go. There's my soapbox. In a nutshell, tent counts were done for the month of January. We're 81 tents, and I gave Scott and the board the report if you'd like to look at the pictures and then numbers per street. The number 81 is different than the total count because I realized that my tent count person accidentally counted some tents on 13th Avenue. We all know that that's our border, but we're 14th Avenue. So I deducted the tents that were on 13th. Anyway, you probably saw Coin News last night. They reported our 6 neighborhoods of the downtown core area, and they did declare how many tents Goose Hollow had, and that was 81 in our respective boundaries. But if you were participating in last night's meeting, the point of letting our community know how many unsheltered we have is to advocate for their safety and getting them safely relocated off the street. So it wasn't just, oh my gosh, we have 81 tents. It's how many people do we need to get safely relocated? What are we going to do in this crisis? And where did they go? And over the last month, Goose Hollow did I thought what is a good job during the winter snowstorm. We gave an avenue of opportunity if anyone needed help to get radio cabbed to a shelter, hospital, warming center, or Unity, what have you, approved by the board. One person took us up on that, and that was a success in my eyes. Being a community that supports someone that's ready to be off the community, or off the streets and somewhere safer. And then outreach efforts we spoke about before this. Over 45 jackets were given out there, and blankets, and every single week in the month of December I was out there doing outreach for our unsheltered people, making sure that they were warm, they had shoes on their feet, and if they felt unsafe they were offered the opportunity. And so I would like to thank Goodwill Industries. when I was with you on the board last month, I did ask for $100 budget to provide jackets and shoes. And what I did was I used Sherry's outreach supplies, but I also used Goodwill Industries. I forged a relationship with them, and they gave me truckloads of stuff to make sure that Goose Hollow community, as well as some of the other downtown areas, were their needs were met, because we all know not everybody goes to a warming shelter. So anyway, thank you so much. The $100 check that I received, I still have in my possession. I haven't cashed it yet. I may give it back to the Goose Hollow board, or I could apply it towards the radio cab balance, if that's okay. I'll let you know when I do that. I'll let the treasurer know exactly what I'm going to do for transparency. And then also this month, trash abatement solve did not help our neighborhood with the monthly solve cleanup. For the last one was this Monday. It was for MLK Day. They chose to focus on the other areas of downtown instead of Goose Hollow. So I personally went out with my family and some of the other Goose Hollow residents, and we still picked up trash in our Goose Hollow neighborhood and made sure that our needs were met on MLK Day. And 13th and Montgomery was cleaned up by Huckerp. If you noticed, all of a sudden that area, it's been over 6 months of biohazard conditions, block wide trash in the road. They finally cleaned it. Huckerp actually expanded their budget and their teams to help clean. So if you would like to look on the Huckerp schedule, it's online for transparency. You'll know who gets, they call it campsite removal and trash reduction at this point. So 13th is looking better. Collins Circle is looking like a hot mess right now. And I'm sorry, but I can't safely engage that area without proper outreach to get trash abatement, because people are actively living there, and we give respect to people who are living there, and we wait for Huckerp to do that. So please PDX report. It's working a little bit better than last year. And then I want to also mention to all of you that we had a homicide in Goose Hollow on December 21st. We lost a gentleman by the name of DeAndre Stevens, 30 years old. He got gunned down on 18th and Morrison. And we need to recognize that gun violence impacts our neighborhood as well. So, and we lost a life in our community, and the community feels it as well. So in closing, opportunities for public safety, opportunities for our Goose Hollow residents are the following. You can join in on PSAC, which the next meeting is February 8th. Excuse me. It will have, yes, PSAC will be hosting the sheriff's position candidates, which will be Derek Peterson and Nicole Morrissey O'Donnell. So if you'd like to learn more about that position, is actually a very important position in Multnomah County, the sheriff's position. And then the next opportunity is, forgive me, let's see. Looks like People for Portland have been putting out surveys. If you have not paid attention, it's peopleforportland.org. A lot of surveys going out. If you want to contribute to those surveys, please do so. The Portland Charter Commission has been holding listening sessions, and I want to say, Vadim, would you like to speak on that a little bit?
I don't know if anybody wants to listen to me, but there's a lot going on. A Charter Commission. The next couple of months are going to be pretty essential. We're going to actually kind of have an idea about the recommendations that'll be going to the ballot in November. That'll be by March. Those broad outlines will be complete. It'll go to the city attorney in April to get a cost analysis and the wording, and then a vote in May. Public hearings in May, vote in June, and then by July, early July, there'll be a final vote on the recommendations as to how the city charter will be changed. The wording for the ballot in November about this form of city government, as well as the elections. There's a lot to talk about there, but maybe we can schedule our next meeting to kind of discuss some of those things, because there is a lot to talk about. The form of government, as well as the election system. More city council people probably will be recommended. City manager probably, although there's some discussion about that. District voting, so instead of at large voting through 4 probably different districts around the city. Feel free to, if you're interested in this at all, I don't want to take up time here, but feel free to reach out to me individually, and I'll be glad to discuss in greater detail. By the way, the coin interview, the coin story was great. I thought it was good. It painted people in a good light. It actually made it look like we, well, didn't make it look like, but that that the city's not doing enough about the camping, that we're concerned about it. And the last point was that we're trying to hold the city accountable. I think the story was great. I think Tiffany is a star now. I think she came off really well. Do watch the coin interview or the coin story if you haven't yet. I think it made us look good, and people I've spoken with have said as much. So good job, Tiffany.
Thank you, Vadim. And then in closing, for public safety, I just want to let you know today I was up in North Portland. I was invited over to the North Vancouver church, which is Reverend Hennessy's church. I was working with them on some outreach efforts, but also talking about homicide and gun violence. And I was explaining to them the loss of life of Goose Hollow, having someone gunned down right on our sidewalks right there. And I got a tour of their church, and they do a lot of listening sessions and gun violence initiatives and community-led initiatives. And I want to give a shout out to IPAC. They have bi-weekly listening sessions. They are working with the Portland Peace Initiative. So there is a listening session coming up on January 27th, 6 to 7 o'clock at night. If you want that link, please do so. And lastly, they showed me the room where Martin Luther King was, that visited and spoke to the people, one and only places that he spoke in Oregon. And I was just honored that I got to be invited into that room to be in that room in this week in recognition of MLK, and also talking about Goose Hollow issues as well. So thank you to that church and what they do for our community, especially on gun violence. So thank you to Reverend Hennessy, Robert King. PSAC hosted Robert King and Lisa Broderick for Portland Peace Initiative about gun violence. And so, and also PSAC hosted the state DPSST, which stands for the Department of Public Safety Standards and Training. Why they were a guest speaker is we wanted to ask a few more questions about standards in our community for private security. As you see, a lot of people are fearful, and now private securities are being utilized. You're seeing more in our community, and because of a lack of police presence and what have you, it is what it is. And we wanted to make sure that we understand that the state has a regulating agency that focuses on private security, and that they do have standards that are upheld, and they investigate any claims and concerns. So just to put it out there, if you want more information about that, please reach out to PSAC. We pay attention to all public safety issues and concerns in our community, and that was one of them this month. All right, well, thank you so much, everyone, for your time. Hopefully I didn't run too long. Eric, I see you have a question.
Well, not a question. I was at your meeting yesterday, and I liked the initial speaker. I was familiar with some of the things that he mentioned, but I believe, and perhaps you can get more detail, not necessarily tonight, where they were talking about the San Diego format of what they've done with homeless, the Salt Lake City format of what they've done. And then I believe they had mentioned, aside from the Eugene, back east. And it always had dawned on me, and we've discussed this many times, that the city of Portland does very good at talking, but not at doing. And it seems that some of the templates that were set out last night could be very, very viable for us, whether it's choosing one of them or taking bits and pieces from the best of all these other formats. But I think that's something that should really be brought to further attention of our community, as well as PSAC and NWNW.
Eric, thank you. I'm going to take that compliment because Eric left me a message today saying he really appreciated the Goose Hollow Safety Livability meeting this month, and that it was informative, and just you walked away feeling like, wow, that was a good one. And I want to say thank you to Goose Hollow, because we hosted a great guest speaker, Keith Wilson. And I hope we continue down this path of finding the right guest speakers that fit the needs of our situation right now. And the Coin News did not speak on the fact that the whole premise of our safety livability was around Built for Zero, reducing our unsheltered crisis and looking at other areas and what they've been doing in certain models. So we weren't just focused on the tents like being an issue in our neighborhood. We were actually talking about how do we decrease the numbers. And I kind of mentioned this on the beginning of the call, so I'll wind down now. But yeah, we advocate for housed and unhoused. Thank you.
And Eric, we are doing follow-up with Keith Wilson. So if you think that there's a need to have it in this forum or Neighbors West Northwest or other forums, the dialogue is going to be ongoing for quite some time. Yeah.
Well, it should really be at all forums. I look at it with PSAC, again, an organization that talks. Let's see what they do long term. They've been together now 2 years. And I think these are a lot of proposals that PSAC, which allegedly represents not only the west side of Portland, but all of Portland, can really make an impact on.
All right, thanks, everybody. Jerry, is there anything to update us on the Stadium Oversight Committee? I know that there has been some concerns during the Timbers playoffs that there were, people lining up at the stadium and the extra trash and things like that. Has that been discussed in the past month?
No, there has not been a meeting of the Oversight Committee since early December. Excuse me, since early November. The next meeting will be February 22nd. Several of us that are members of the Oversight Committee did talk with Timbers, specifically with the general manager, about the lining up of folks, and the answer was that they have a handle on their season ticket holders. They can tell them what they can and can't do. The rest of those folks, as long as they're obeying city law, there's not much they can do about them. They did increase their security presence out there. They did keep people from doing the tenting and sort of the rolling tailgate that we've seen in prior years. But as far as folks standing in line, there's not much they can do about that. There is an issue with respect to the metered zone in Northwest. And it looks like that's going to be dealt with by the parking committee of NWDA. There is a current issue with water infiltration into the stadium as a result of construction on the other side of 18th. And that's going to be interesting to hear about. Whether it's going to involve the public or the neighborhood, I have no idea, unless it results in the closure of 18th for some reason, which, hey, stranger things have happened. It happened actually to 20th 30 or 40 years ago. The street was nearly abandoned, but pretty much saved by action of the neighborhood and some of the neighboring property owners. So that's it.
Okay, well, does anybody on the call have an issue they'd like to bring up about the stadium? If not, we'll move on.
Okay.
Right, not hearing any, thank you. Planning and zoning, we've already discussed. The only thing on the docket really for that is the Block 7 Madeira Main project. You've probably seen that Lincoln High School is looking more and more finished. Just to remind people, People will probably start moving in June. And it will certainly be open for the 2022-2023 school year. During that time, they will then start, I don't know if they're knocking down or deconstructing the old school, but they're going to be building the athletic field where the old school is over the next year. So during the 2022-2023 school year, and then summer 2023, the expectation is that the entire project will be complete. So looking forward to that. Anybody have any questions on, yes, Tiffany?
Not necessarily the school, but I'm super aware of who's in the room with us now. It looks like there's a gentleman by the name, or someone by the name of James Dingwall. Would you mind saying hello to all of us and letting us know how long you've been a resident of Goose Hollow?
Yes. Oh, I have to open on the camera. Hello. So I sat in on the meeting last month. I got out here in September. I'm in PSU's Urban Regional Planning Program.
Hey, James, welcome. It's so good to see your camera turned on, and we encourage you to come visit us more often. Is there anything you would like to see out of this meeting in the future?
Still just getting my bearings, so.
Well, we don't want to scare you off, so just thank you for being here today and being a part of our community.
Well, I'd like to see less construction at Tiffany's house.
Can you hear it? Yeah, I always got stuff going on. Say, I got overalls, you know, it's if you know me, I'm a worker.
Things are happening. Okay, I'm gonna move quickly through the Neighbors West Northwest report. So as you know, I believe there was, in October, there was the motion made against Alan and his newspaper. During the most recent meeting a week ago, that same person who raised the motion in October raised a new motion to rescind his previous motion. And when you rescind an accepted motion, it requires a 2/3 vote. That's an interesting Robert's Rules issue that we had to look up and confirm. But the vote on the rescinding was all in favor except for one, which is the previous president. Just to remind you, there's a new president, Rick Canuven, of the organization. He ran a very tight ship and tight meeting. So that motion that was accepted banning Allen is no longer in effect. They are establishing, Neighbors West Northwest is establishing a public safety committee, similar to our own, except it's now a coalition-wide public safety meeting. I asked Tiffany, and she said that she can't add one more minute to her schedule, completely understandable. So I want to just throw it out to anybody. If anybody else would like a chance to serve on the Neighbors West Northwest Public Safety Meeting. So go ahead and contact me if you are interested, and then I'll do a very, very long and intense interview of finding out if you have a pulse, and then send your recommendation to Neighbors West Northwest. Another thing we did is voted to approve the executive director job description. The current executive director, Mark Sieber, is retiring. He intended to retire in December, but because of all the stuff that's going on, he's agreed to stay on until he has a replacement. And so we have approved the executive director job description so that we can properly interview for that position. And lastly, there is a January 29th work session for the visioning of Neighbors West Northwest. Unfortunately, I'm going to be judging a gymnastics competition down in California, won't be able to make it. Tiffany, if you would like to attend it, you certainly can. Otherwise, we won't have a representative listening in on that visioning process. And it certainly won't be the last meeting. It's just one in a long list of visioning meetings. So does anybody have any questions? Eric, I see your hand up.
Yeah, my question would be, I know they rescinded the motion to allow Alan to attend meetings, and obviously that should entail doing business with him again, but nothing was mentioned at that particular meeting on whether they're going to do advertising with Alan. Is that something that needs to be reviewed? And what are your feelings on that?
Well, I thought it was basically rescinding, when you rescind the motion, you rescind the whole motion, which included not doing business with the Northwest Examiner.
Correct, but they haven't done business with him over the last several months. So that needs then to be reinstated, whether it's on a quarterly basis or a monthly basis.
Yeah, well,
So are you in favor of continuing to doing business with NW Examiner?
Well, I was never in favor of not doing business, so obviously I'm in favor of doing it. I believe that Rick Knuven is fully in favor of being copacetic and continuing on the way it had been before this mess started in October. So I suspect, I haven't heard from him specifically, but I suspect that we're going to get back to the way things were operating. Alan, I don't know if you can confirm whether you've been approached to do more advertisements from Neighbors West Northwest, or if they're continuing to give you the cold shoulder. Alan, you're frozen.
I also heard through a rumor mill, whether it's true or not, that Rees has resigned. Do you know anything about that?
I don't. I got an email from him today, so it's possible. Maybe he gave his notice, but I haven't heard anything.
Thank you.
All right. Any questions about Neighbors West Northwest, that wonderful organization that we're going to try to turn around and make a jewel of the city? It is, I know I joke about it, but the people that participate in these organizations are giving a lot of their time to make things work. And I don't like it when things don't work. There's a lot of people that feel the same way. Rather than talk about minor details, they really want to raise the bar and or I guess raise the tide, which raises all boats, as they say. And so, I believe that the new president has that ideal in mind, and I think we're going to continue to move forward and hopefully do better. So I'm looking forward to continuing serving on the committee, and I hope to report some good things in future months. Is there any other business that we need to discuss? If not, yeah,
Not really. I just wanted to thank all of you. I mean, for all of the work that you've been doing, just listening to everyone and what they're doing. It's just deeply appreciated. And especially under these COVID conditions, it's people, we're all stressed out, and to take, for people to volunteer their time and step up to the plate. I just really appreciate it. And I also, the other thing I'd like to say, I just have this profound sadness over Block 7. I just hope the thing never gets built. But I'm not real hopeful based on what I'm hearing this evening. So I don't know, maybe somebody could say something to make me feel better.
Well, Sherry, you certainly are in the same boat with many, many people in the neighborhood. So you're not alone in wishing things were different. And it hasn't been built yet, and it's possible. Stranger things have happened, that if it does get built, that it turns out, maybe not in the next 10 years, but maybe 30 years from now, people will look at the building and say, "Wow, that's really a huge benefit to the neighborhood." You really never know how these things are going to work out, but you're not alone in your feeling. We've done everything that we can to try to fight it over, decades, honestly, development on this website, to make sure that if a project was built there, that it was the right project. We didn't feel that this one was the right one.
Maybe it'll turn into a press box.
Yeah, it's
outside of the commercial building.
Yeah, they certainly spent a lot of money designing the press blocks residential building, and that never got built. So, anything is possible. One last thing to tell you all is that you can contact me privately if you wish. If you have a passion for the neighborhood that you want to figure out how to do, whether it's, a cleanup of a certain block, or a certain passion project, certain program that you want to do, or if you want to serve on a certain committee, if you have a certain interest, whether it's planning or safety or outreach or something like that, please contact me, and we'll try to make sure that it works for you, so that your time serving on the board is meaningful and that you feel that you've made a difference. And with
Well,
that,
thank you Scott. Thank you very much. Oh, one last thing I wanted to ask Tiffany before we go. Last time, or the last few times, Tiffany's been talking about fires in the neighborhood, and I didn't hear any mention of the fires this month. Tiffany, have there been fires that literally that you've put out this past month?
You know, hey, there's some success right there. Goose Hollow was what, on fire every 7 days, a fire, but not this month. And maybe because of the cold weather and the snow, what have you. I don't know, but thank you. Yeah. I guess we can't live up to our hot name.
Thank you.
Unless you all seen a fire out there and I missed it. I don't know. So, no fireballs.
All right, well, with that being said, it's good seeing everybody. Be well, and we'll talk soon. Take care.
Thank you, Scott.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, and thank you again.
Not turn off.